I had no experience in mechanical engineering at that point. This is the part of the story where Smallhd almost dies because we scaled up our office, we hired a bunch of people. The DP7 is still a ways out, and that's like our lifeline for how we're going to recoup this investment and keep paying our bills. By the end of Smallhd, I was just like an executive, I was just sitting in my office doing spreadsheets, and this business is extremely different. I don't know whether it's some sort of intervention or luck. Recognizing when opportunity strikes and then seizing it is one of the most important things. But people just kind of found their way into my life. Nothing's easy, but yeah, this thing was a crazy story.
From Comfort on Set, this is I Made This for Crew, and I am your host, Kane Katubik. This is our second episode, and I had the pleasure of talking with Dale Backus. He is one of the core founders of Smallhd, a major brand for on-set monitors. Dale currently runs a company called OhSnap. You may have seen their addictive ads. A quick technical note about the recording: the podcast picked up all of my audio on Dale's end, so you'll hear me coming in out loud in some conversation. My apologies, but with that noted, here is the show.
I said I made this for crew.
I actually was born in Durham, North Carolina, and then moved to Buffalo, or the suburbs of Buffalo, for a few years. And I moved down to South Florida, Boca Raton, for another few years, but then came back to Cary, North Carolina, which is, suburb of Raleigh, in 1997 or something. So, I moved around a little bit, but as a kid, I was a nerd. My dad worked for IBM, so I always had computers, and he would sit there literally like in our kitchen and, write out like, MS-DOS like commands. Like, this is how you make a directory. This is how you look at a directory. And so, I've always been technical. I was the technical one of my siblings, and just a huge nerd. Had a hard time making friends and things like that in like school. So I would just spend a lot of time on the computer and stuff. And, I'm almost 40. So I was growing up, when the internet I was kind of growing up with the internet. When I got like my first 14.4, baud modem in, 95 or something, and then kind of kept going along with it. But, because of that, I, learned early that the internet can pretty much provide any knowledge you need for anything, even back then. But I realized early on that I really enjoyed inventing things. I would just come up with these weird ideas. And my dad was pretty technical, and so he could kind of help me with some of this. But like one of these things I built was like just random. I had built it for no reason at all other than just to do it. Was this little thing you could put in your mailbox. It was basically a piece of cardboard folded and creased, and then have aluminum foil on either side and wires coming off that, so it would close the contact with like mail was set on top of it, and it would spin a little fan on top of the mailbox.
Oh, hell
Just
yeah.
as
All
like,
right.
And so I would just, just dink around. I remember when people asked me what I want to do when I grew up or whatever, I'd be like, I want to invent things and I want to sell those things in a store, kind of child's view of the world. And then, yeah, I just kind of went through. I ended up moving back because that cardboard thing was in Florida. I moved back to Cary, and just, was just really into computers in general, made websites and all that kind of stuff. And then when it came time to, figure out what I really wanted to do, I was a terrible student, just horrible. I barely graduated high school. And
Classic. Come on now. That's
like by the skin of my teeth, it came down to one exam in chemistry that I only passed because there was a heavy curve applied to it. And then I didn't want to go to college. My dad really wanted me to go to college. We had a really heavy disagreement about that. Ended up not. And then my best friend, and I made it like in around 10th grade, was really into video. And I just was like infatuated with this. Like they were doing like high-end CG post-production stuff in the late 90s with like, stuff that back then was just not, your average person doing. So I got really, really close to them, and we started just doing tons of videos and stuff. And so after high school, we were like, let's just start a production company.
Was that Wes?
Yeah, that was Wes. Yeah.
the other co-founder of Smallhd. Okay, so Wes Phillips, was he like known like a hometown hero kind of for that kind of stuff?
Honestly, it's a good question. I think he was actually a really good BMX biker, and used to like go on the circuit and do races and stuff. And he was like ranked number 2 in the state at one point. And then at some point, his dad like brought home a camera, and they started making stuff with it. And then like he literally just dropped the BMX like a bad habit and just went and started making videos. So they were doing all this crazy like stop motion stuff and special effects, and they were. And so in high school, we would go to like the beach and like on spring break or something with a small group of friends, and we would film everything and make these awesome like like music in the background, like videos. He were always innovating weird things. Like he came up with this system called bungee skim, where you would basically swim out into the ocean a couple hundred feet, drop an anchor. It was attached to a bungee cord. You'd walk it back to shore, and you'd load the bungee cord up really, and you stand on a skimboard, and then you would just take off out into the ocean, and we would film all that. And I still say to this day that the idea for GoPro was originally mine and was stolen from me.
Oh, wow.
I say that jokingly because it probably wasn't, but like we used to go skiing out west once a year, like me and his family. And one of those years, so the Phillips, Wes's dad had this basement. And this basement was like just a crazy, like packed full of crap, like workshop that you could just basically, I had all access to all these tools. And so one year I built this little box for like this plexiglass box that was all like watertight and had like button membranes and stuff on it, so you could still operate the camera with like and protect the camera from water and moisture and impact and stuff. And it had this tiny little Sony camera. I can't remember like the series or whatever, but it had this little slide door on the front, and you'd flip it open and it would automatically turn on, and it could take video anyway. So I was like, I want a way to like mount a camera to the end of my ski pole so I can be skiing down and get behind people and follow them and make the camera do cool stuff. And I built that thing and I brought it there, and we ended up making an awesome ski video out of it. And I remember like I had like 4 or 5 people on the mountain ask me like, what is that thing? Where can you get it? Where can I buy it? And that was basically like a GoPro before there was GoPro. Yeah. And it never occurred to me that that would be a cool product to make. But I was really, really young at the time, and I had no idea how to make a camera.
That's sweet. You made an action housing for a little Sony camera.
I keep wondering if like one of those guys that asked me was the GoPro guy or something,
You'll see him at a convention, and they'll admit it to you one day. So you started making videos with Wes. You like adopted his passion. I remember when I started making videos, I was just making tools so then I could be making videos. I was like, oh, I just made this gimbal. Now I got to find out a way to use it to make a video. Is that what was starting to happen with your guys' films?
100%. Yeah. We started this production agency, and the hard part came, which was getting people to pay us for making videos. We were on we had no budget, right? So we were basically using a modified Canon HV20, which is kind of a famous camera from back in the early 2000s. It could basically kind of shoot 24p. It was like 24, I think it's like 24f or something. It was like this weird format, but mini DV, highly compressed. But we had, this is like the era of 35 millimeter lens adapters, which, you could adapt like photography, 35 millimeter lenses onto and project onto the sensor of the camera to give you that shallow depth of field. But then the next problem is the compression of the mini DV is just horrible. It's like, 420 or had very little, bit depth, and it would just fall apart if you try to do anything with it. And so we needed a way, had an HDMI port that could send uncompressed video out of it. And we said, okay, well, what if we built a little capture computer thing that we could run the uncompressed into? And so I built a little portable like thing that I made a backpack out of, so we could like wear it on your back, plug in the HDMI, and had like a RAID hard drive array in there, because the hard drives back then weren't very fast, and SSDs were enormously expensive at the time. And so built that, so we solved that problem. But then the next problem was, how do we monitor the camera? And then, because we need to be able to switch to the computer interface to be able to like press record, switch back to monitor the camera. And to my surprise, there were no HD monitors out there. Like none of them. They were all like Marshalls, whatever, that were like 640 by 480. And so I needed one with a HDMI port on it and a VGA port on it for the computer. And So I said, you know what, let's build that. At the time, I was building homemade projectors. It's just like a fun thing to do. And like out of wood, you build these big wooden boxes, and you just get a big Fresnel lens and a big lamp, and take this assembled LCD panel with a driver board, and it's essentially in some optics, and you have a projector. And I was like, this is like the same stuff you need, the same guts you'd need to build a monitor. So let's do that. And that's kind of what led to the whole monitor thing, ultimately.
Holy cow. Well, when you first started making that like conversion box, I remember seeing the Hurlbut documentary, and you're like wearing it on your back with some maybe ropes, or it was like a backpack or something like that. Didn't quite yet have it strapped down, so you had to like hold on to it. What kinds of projects like were demanding this type of technology, or was it just kind of like out of your own you wanted to make something?
Well, yeah, the problem is, we're trying to get people to pay us money, ideally as much money as possible, for a video product. And back then, this is like early 2000s. The only way to get like professional quality was basically with film or very expensive digital cameras at the time that were like way out of our reach. And so for this like 3 to 5 year period before DSLR, when the Canon 5D Mark II came out, it changed everything. But before that, right, there was this gap in time where if you wanted to create high quality video, you had to basically figure like just kind of like hack stuff together. That's where the whole 35 millimeter adapter lens like thing, for a while we were actually trying to build our own static ground glass 35 millimeter adapter, because the way it works is you need to have like a grainy surface for the lens to project on, and the camera sensor like looks at that little window. But you either had rotating ground glass or you had vibrating ground glass to get rid of the static grain, essentially, of the noise. But if you can make a crystalline structure fine enough, theoretically, you could do it statically. And we spent a ton of time buying all these crazy waxes and getting like slide glass, plasma treated and all, because we had a friend who worked at a lab. And we were basically, and we actually made one that worked, but we could not reproduce it. That was a crazy thing. I don't know why we even tried. But the point is that we had this little, I think it was like a $900 camera that had sort of like a couple things that were right about it: HDMI port, uncompressed output, and the 24 frame mode. That if we just added some stuff to it around it, we could basically fake having a high production quality so we could make better quality content, so we could get better jobs.
And that was working. You guys were getting the better, like the local car dealership ads and stuff like that? Or
honestly, I think most of those things were shot on, we had a JVC, HD 100, I think it was called. It's like a shoulder mounted. It was 720p, but it was still pretty rough. And I think we ended up shooting most of the stuff with that. All the stuff I'm talking about, like I can't even remember. I think we may have shot in 1 or 2 ads with it, and before we started realizing that the equipment, direction was more appealing than, because with the service business, it's like it's 1 for 1, time for money. Like it's very hard to scale without just working more. And I like the idea of building one thing and then replicating it and selling it to multiple people. And it's just more in line with what I enjoy doing too.
when you started making a monitor that could handle HDMI and VGA and eventually SDI, I think the first one didn't have SDI, and this was the DP1, you guys named it. And I think, how many did you, I believe the story is that you sold some on eBay. Is that how you got your first few customers?
Yeah, so the first things we sold on eBay wasn't the DP1. It was actually called the 12. It was a 12-inch 720p display. I had no experience in mechanical engineering at that point, other than just fabricating stuff for whatever, in terms of CAD and like manufacturing processes like sheet metal and CNC milling and all that kind of stuff. I had injection molding. I had no idea about any of it. So the best thing I could find at the time was there's this little software called eMachine Shop, and it was basically all 2D. But then you basically draw a pattern, and then you draw bend lines, and you define the
Cloud software, yeah.
yeah, and basically you would create this flat pattern with these bend lines, and then you could create these boxes this way, and then they would actually make the part and send it to you, which is a really hard way to make something like this. But we ended up making these like aluminum bent sheet metal shells, and literally like the buttons on this thing were metal rivets that we like grinded down. It was really rough. But And it took us like 8 hours to build each one of these things because it was just so finicky and it was just not a great design. And so, yeah, so we were like, hey, we built like 10 of them or something. And we were like, let's just see if anyone wants them because we don't need this many. And then people were buying them for like a lot of money. And we were like, okay, well, that's interesting. It seems like there's a need here. And I remember, and we started kind of going further and further down this like monitor path. And I remember Wes's dad, Reed, saying, man, if you sell like 100 of these things, it would get really interesting. Which is, in hindsight now is funny, but yeah, so that was the 12. And then we said, okay, let's get serious. Let's do the DP1. The hardest part about this for the first several years was always the panels. Most people don't realize this, but like panels are very capital intensive. And the higher the generation line that makes them in order to make the higher pixel structure, higher pixel density structures, are really, really like they want to make a huge batch of panels and they want to shut it down and build another one. They don't just like make these things like on the spot or whatever. So in any industrial panel that we could get access to in lower quantities, like through a distributor or something, were really crappy like ATM panels or like, machine panels, like nothing, that was high definition at the time, which is why the Marshalls and the other monitor companies of the world weren't doing it yet, because the only way to do it was to basically go into the gray market and buy surplus inventory for things like tablets and laptops and stuff, because that's where those pixel densities were at the time. And so we found this, I think it was 11.9 inch panel. There's this like website, I think it's called like hkinventory.com or something that I don't know sure if it still exists, but these people just posting surplus inventory. And we went and we bought like I think only 100, but it was like 20 grand or something, right? It was like $200 a panel or something. And ended up being, and I got an email like, I don't know, a few days later or something. It's like, hey, if you're doing business with this person, they basically stole from you or whatever. And so we lost, I think it was Wes's basically life savings, about 20 grand that he had wired and was gone. And that kind of almost killed the whole thing. It was just like, man, how do we come back from this? And then we got the we got the motivation again at some point to try again, but this time we found this 8.9 inch panel that was 720p. And in the meantime, I learned how to use SolidWorks so I could like make a proper chassis. We were CNC milling it in Burlington here. So one of Wes's family members owns this machine shop. And then we found this circuit board that we could fit into the chassis, which is basically like a cheap like Chinese television circuit board. It could do image processing, but not much else. And it was pretty rough. And so when we did the injection molded the plastic bezel on the front, and we kind of made a monitor, but we didn't have the money to buy the materials for it. So we launched a 24-hour pre-sale on our website. Basically, like went out on forums like DV Info and stuff like that, and said, "Hey guys, we're doing this pre-order." We ended up selling about 60 or 70 of them in a 24-hour period, which ended up, I think we were selling them for around $1,000 or something. So we had like 60, 70 grand, and that's how we bought the parts with, and that's kind of what started the whole thing.
And that was 2009 when you guys officially started Smallhd. You guys were machining the DP1s at Wes's family's machine shop, and you had these boards coming in. I saw you guys were like, you had to modify them to get to fit into the chassis that you guys made for them, like cutting on a bandsaw. It was not sketchy, but it was like,
oh, it was sketchy. Like the circuit board we had spec'd for it, when we went to go actually buy the quantity of them we needed to build the batch, had changed and wasn't available anymore. All they had was this bigger one. And so bought that and started looking at it. And we're like, you know what? This whole section of the board seems to be audio related, and we're not doing anything with audio. So let's just try cutting it. And we knew nothing about electronics at that point, right? We just put it on the bandsaw and plugged it in. It still worked. We're like, holy crap. And so, yeah, we had to bandsaw every DP1 board. And there were quite a few of them.
Were all of them sold on eBay, all the DP1s?
No, these were actually, the DP1s were sold through smallhd.com. That was our first, like, our own website. Yeah. And actually, like, it was all through PayPal. So I was doing all the website stuff at the time, and there was this, like, thing called Foxy Cart, and you could basically put it in the payment processor that way, whatever. And PayPal basically wouldn't release the money for us until we provided proof of like shipment, which was crazy. That was a huge blow, and I honestly don't even remember how we got the money to buy the materials. I really don't remember, but ultimately we did.
It seems like The name Smallhd is pretty straightforward, but was there a couple hundred different names, or was it just like everyone agreed, Smallhd is the name of the company?
No, I remember actually sitting down and talking about the name. We ended up on Smallhd because SEO. That was the whole reason. We thought
Yeah.
people would type in, if I'm looking for a Smallhd monitor, which is what we did.
There you go.
That we would be at the top of that list, and that's literally all it was.
And it worked, and you guys were off and running. Did you start to get like that feeling of brand recognition after those first 60 units? I guess you sold, that was just the pre-order, 60. So do you remember how many DP1s you ended up selling, and like, is that when you started like thinking about the next project?
Yeah, I think by the time we were done, I think we ended up selling about 1,000 of them, and I can't remember the exact time on this. We're talking like 15,
Yeah,
17 years ago now or something. But we sold 1,000, and there was some overlap, and we started developing the DP6. The DP6 was our first product that was the board was made to our design. It had SDI. It was obviously 5.6 inches, so it was much smaller. We just learned a ton through that period, and we were able to make our first true design. I remember I went to China. Oh yeah, I don't know how I did this. Like sometimes I look back and I'm like, how the hell did I? And I found this like rinky-dink Chinese supplier that could make the circuit board custom to our spec and could make this SDI daughter board. Because for SDI, so these image processing boards that we're using in the DP1, right? Like they're essentially off the shelf. It's a processor called MStar, and it's still being used out there. It's a TV processor, and it has all the color processing and stuff built in, but it's very like fixed. And so it has HDMI inputs and all that, and like S video and composite and all that component and all this other stuff. We didn't need most of that. To get SDI, there's no direct interface into the MStar. So you basically have to convert the SDI to HDMI to feed it into the processor, the MStar. And that involves an FPGA and all this kind of stuff. And so we had no idea what any of this stuff was at the time. And so this company claimed they could do it. And I think I talked to a few companies, and some of them were just giving like really weird pricing and stuff. And this one just seemed the most reasonable. Like, that sounds about right. And so I remember I went to China for the first time. This is like 2010 or something, and China was a different place back then. I went to China. I literally hired a translator to go with me from the U.S. And I remember sitting down in their office, tiny little office in Shenzhen. Turn on, like the board was laying out on the table, and the panel was there, and he turned it on, and I put like the Gladiator or something on it, and I was just like, it was my first time seeing pixels this dense, right? It was just like this crazy feeling came over me. I was just like, whoa, that's so sharp. That like looks so good. And then we developed the DP6, and that leads into another part of the story, but I'll stop there.
Dang, that's amazing. Going to China for the first time. To be able to fly to China with the translator means that you guys are doing really well. Obviously, you sold 1,000 DP1s. You knew you had a business. You're ready to take some risk, and I think that's what you're doing in China. You're about to take some risks. And what was going on besides that? Were people like impressed? Where was your family like, oh yeah, Dale's big business guy now, or like what was happening in your life around that time?
It was nothing really impressive at the time. We were just kind of working in the like in the dark, essentially. The period of time between the 12 thing, that monitor, the very first one, and the DP1 was actually a really difficult time. I got married in 2006, so I was already married when we started all this down, right? So I'm like, we're trying to like find places to live and all this stuff. Then Wes got married like right around that time. It's so long ago now, I have a hard time remembering exactly how it went, but he ended up moving to Maryland to live with his wife for a period between basically when we thought the thing was dead, and then Wes got married and moved away. And I basically, from that point to the DP1, I basically was working essentially a construction job. It was AV installation, but like in new construction. And so I'm like waking up at 6 a.m. and like going to, meetings, and then working all day, pulling cable and mounting stuff just to pay the bills. And then I would get home and I would work all night, on Smallhd. I was learning CAD software and basically designing the DP1 and just figuring all that stuff out and working with China. and that was, I don't think people saw much of me for that period of time, but I was just cranking away. We had this dream, we had a clear vision of what we were trying to build, and I just had to acquire the skills and put one foot in front of the other for a period of, I don't know, 6 to 12 months or something, while that came to life. And I remember telling my wife, I was like, don't worry, we're going to start making money from Smallhd soon. It's just kept taking forever and just took longer and longer and longer. And it was a tough time. It's just one of those, most stories like this, like they have these challenges that you hear about all the time that people just have to get through. And I attribute that to just a lot of what I've been able to accomplish, which isn't like, not Elon Musk, obviously, but like, you just got to keep showing up,
Yeah, planting the seeds and then harvesting when it's right, when time's right. I have this theory that the people who have to deal with a full-time job and run their business in the 5 to 9, and then the 5 a.m. to 9 a.m., that's better training to run your business than just going all in, because then you dilly dally and you don't know exactly what to do with your time, so you just waste it. So I have a feeling that's what happened to you. And by the time you were doing Smallhd full time, you knew exactly what to do with every second of your time. You start talking about the DP6, I think, that's when you got the new board. You got all these parts from China. Is that when you started hiring a team to be assemblers?
No, we actually, before the DP6 was even thought about, we had hired some people. Wes's older brother, Graham, but we were still in the basement at this point. We had a couple people now working there who would help build monitors essentially, and just shipping and fulfillment stuff. Like Wes's wife and my wife at certain points would help like fulfillment and shipping. And so that was basically it. It was just me, Wes, Chris, Graham, Reed, his dad, and Clint. And that was all still while we were in the basement. Like, Clint's office was like under the parents' bedroom, basically. And then at some point we went and we got an office, because I remember that I don't think we built DP6s in the basement. I think we built those in our first office, which was like 5,000 or 6,000 square feet and had just a little bit of office space, but then it was mostly like warehouse space that we did all the assembly and inventory and stuff in. And then we started hiring more people. And again, it's hard to say who, what, when, and all that really accurately, but that's the general story.
At the time, you were the CTO of Smallhd, running up until I guess you got through the 6. Did that also sell like hotcakes, like the DP1, or was you need some marketing?
Yeah, the DP6 quadrupled the business overnight. Like that's really what established Smallhd, was the DP6, because the DP1 was like janky. We had like the buttons were on the back because that's just the way it worked out in the design. We couldn't control certain things. The UI interface was really complicated to navigate. I remember making like instruction manuals for like, if you want to change brightness, click like button 1 3 times, button 4 2 times. Like it was like a freaking cheat code on a Nintendo or something. So the DP6, we were able to do a custom menu, and we in one of our coolest innovations, which is crazy. It was our second product. We added this scroll wheel thing to the top. It was a scroll wheel that clicks and 2 buttons, and that's how you navigate it. And that was actually really novel for the industry. Ended up being copied by TV Logic and some other ones down the line.
Wow.
But we went to NAB that year. I don't know, 2010 or 11, I think, and showed it. I remember Philip Bloom was like big at the time. Kind of a big like influencer, and so we had the only monitor that was actually HD and small at the time. So it was just a very good product at the right time. And so like we said, we like quadrupled the business revenue. I think I don't know exactly the numbers, but I'm guessing we probably did 3 or 4 million that year. Then we got this office and we added to the team, and it was a really exciting time. I really look back on it fondly. It was just one of those super exciting, because I'm like 20, I don't know, 22 or 23 at the time.
What's your feelings and thoughts just on marketing in relation to the product that you're like innovating day in and day out?
Yeah, I think we all know that the world we live in, the best product doesn't always win. It's usually the best marketing. And when we were starting Smallhd, we were in this new office, we were hiring people, and this commercial came back around again. Really, the main thing to say about that is this first Doritos Super Bowl contest which is the first of its kind and the first of that contest. I really credit it for pushing us in the direction we ended up going down with Smallhd and all that, is because the notoriety we got from winning that contest, which we shot on a massively shoestring budget in a very short period of time. I was on my rollerblades getting all the moving shots. It was super, super low budget, but the concept was strong, which I'm just a big believer in. Concept is king in general. But we got a good bit of notoriety from that regionally. And so we were able to started getting calls from real companies who wanted us to produce. We did some stuff for a college, a hospital, a big law firm and stuff like that. Some other campaigns. And that's what we started realizing our production quality wasn't as high as it needed to be for those types of clients. And that's what really pushed us into making all this gear to improve the production quality, which directly led to Smallhd. But that's really what the commercial did, is it accelerated the timeline. So we had skipped the year, and then the third year, we were, right in the thick of this Smallhd stuff, which was just a whirlwind. And I remember I can't remember who decided or what the conversation was but led us doing it. But I remember Wes's dad Reed saying, guys, don't waste your time with this. You're not going to win again. I mean, the odds are just so small, and you have other stuff to do. And we were like, yeah, we get all that, but we're going to do it anyway, because they were offering $1 million prize money this time, which we really needed, because funding a electronic manufacturing business, right? It's a capital intensive business. Inventory is expensive, equipment's expensive and all that. And so this thing came along, and we said, Wes and I are very actively involved in the ideation and the shooting and all the parts all the way through. And we shot it at a local park, and on the 5D this time, so it looked a lot better. But we were able to pull it off, and that one won the contest. So we actually did 2 commercials though. We did that one called Underdog, the other one called Kids These Days, and so they were actually both selected as finalists. Which is insane. And then the Underdog one won and got aired and was ranked second in the USA Today ad meter, which, the way the contest was set up, won us $600,000, which Wes and I took our portion of, and we bought DP6 inventory with.
So 2010, super big year. All that happened. You guys spent a lot of money, made a lot of money. Super established company. You guys are operating in North Carolina in a 6,000, 5,000 square foot warehouse. And at this moment, you guys are a 20-person company or more or less?
Oh, at that point, 15-ish probably.
15, okay.
Yeah. And after we did the DP6, we did the DP4, which was a really fun project. We wanted to make it even smaller for, again, DSLR users and stuff. And we wanted to add EVFs were getting popular around this time, and we really wanted to kind of have something there. And so we made this loop attachment that would flip open. I basically designed that product, all of them at that point too, but that point, DP4, I designed it entirely myself. And it was a really challenging thing because there were optics and some complicated organic modeling with the eye cups and all this kind of stuff. And I think we bought a 3D printer that year, a really, really nice one, and that really was able to expand our scope and abilities. And the DP4 launched, I can't remember what year, 2011, 2012 maybe. I remember Wes and I were playing ping pong in the warehouse one day, and we were just trying to think about what we would do next after the DP6. And I don't know how it came up. We were like, let's go smaller. And so started looking for panels. And I mean, I think it was 800 by 480 resolution or something. It was still pretty low res, but it was so small, it still looked pretty good.
How big was the R&D team? I know you said you were basically the lead on design in that one. So there's probably a large portion of the company that was handling manufacture or assembly, and then a small portion that was sales, and then you were product design. How many people did you have on that project?
At that point, around the DP4, I still think it was mostly just me.
Wow.
so Chris Guan was still there at the time, and he helped out with some things, but um, it was still 90% just me doing it. And I yeah, and then so we didn't have any sales or anything. We didn't really have any marketing at the time. It was really just like we had some ops guys, some customer service, and builders and fulfillment people. Like, because the Smallhd has always been like full stack. Like we've OhSnap, we work with tons of different partners externally. Smallhd, we built the customer service in house. We built the assembly in house, the fulfillment in house. Like everything was always in house, which is really nice. But it's also like got a lot of downsides too. But yeah, we didn't really have a ton of people still at that point. We have learned a ton about the industry. We know what's important to people. We know what people are asking for and care. People want waveforms. People want, other scopes. People want audio functionality, better resolutions, better color, like color science, all this kind of stuff that we were trying to figure out. And I said, we just can't, we've reached the limit of what we can get this M-Star processor to do. I think the next step is we have to go build our own, bespoke hardware and software stack. And so we started, at the time it was called the DP10. It was going to be a 10-inch monitor, and then later on it turned into a 7-inch monitor. But basically, I hired an engineering manager, a guy named Ricardo, who then brought in a hardware engineer to do like the layouts and schematics and stuff. And then we ended up bringing a couple other like FPGA engineers in. We moved into the next office. We were only in that first office for like 2 or 3 years. Then we moved into the office we were in for like 7 years after that, and built an engineering team. And that was the most difficult part of this whole thing. Was I had no idea how hard it was going to be to build this from scratch. FPGAs are finicky things that it's a very specialized skill set. Not a lot of FPGA programmers out there. If they do exist, they're working at like Qualcomm or something. And so I had to attract engineers. We had to pay them a lot more than what we were used to paying people. And we had very little in the way of being able to evaluate how good someone actually was. It's like some guy tells me they're good at Verilog. I'm like, okay, cool, sounds great. And so it was real tough. And this is the part of the story that where Smallhd almost dies, because we scaled up our office, we hired a bunch of people, and we started building this DP7 product. And I spent a lot of time finding panels. So again, the hardest part is always the panels. We found this, 7-inch 720 or 7. I think it was 720p. Yeah, 7-inch 720p panel, and a 7-inch OLED 720p panel. And this was like the first OLED. I don't even remember how I pulled this off, but like, there was basically a Samsung tablet that had the first OLED panel in it that like ever in a device like this in this size. It was like early Gen OLED. And I was able to get a bunch of inventory if I committed to buying a certain amount. So I had to commit to like buying a few thousand of them. Basically like fell off the back of the truck kind of thing. And but it came with no technical support, very little documentation. And so we had to figure out how to reverse engineer how to actually drive this thing. It was a MIPI interface, which is like a mobile panel interface that's really annoying to deal with. And so we had to design the board to work with both LVDS, which is more standard, and MIPI. And we had this FPGA SoC. It was the first of its kind, I think, in the sense where most like monitors at the time were either FPGA based or like image processor based, like M-Star based. It was kind of like the more expensive ones like Marshall were FPGA based. And ours was FPGA plus an SoC, or like an ARM processor, right? Which not an SoC, an ARM processor, an FPGA, and a microcontroller. So it's kind of what an SoC is today, but just like separated.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was like simultaneously, undertaking the most difficult technological challenge of my life. And then what I didn't know at the time was, just because you have the power doesn't mean you should exercise it, right? So I kept throwing stuff in, like, I want to do this, and I want to do this, and I want to do this. And the DP7 ended up taking over 2 years to develop. That was like, I had multiple engineers come and go. Like my best engineer came. He was like, finally, like I had a couple come in that were just terrible. Had to let him go, bring a guy in who was really, really good. And I remember like we're about 60-70% of the way through the project. He had built kind of the core engine and all this kind of stuff. And he said, oh, I'm leaving. I'm going to work for Qualcomm. And I was just like, oh my God. And that really hurt. And then I find this company called Blue Water based in New Zealand. I can't remember how I even found them. that have like this sort of engineer for hire thing where you can just like add developers and started working with them, and they were really good. They had a really good software guy, they had a really good FPGA guy named Russell who still works there today. And they basically took it the rest of the way. But it was, and I'm kind of skipping over parts because I'm trying to shut up, but like that was the whole like that period from like, okay, we're gonna make this in-house thing, to actually shipping it is like a crazy 2 years in which we almost out of business. Rush designed and launched the AC7 series, which was simply done to save our asses. Selling the company, like it was crazy.
For people that don't know, we're talking about FPGA and we're talking about ARM processors. That basically means this is like the first product you guys are making that has like a user interface that you can navigate without the flow chart kind of deal. So the DP7, I think I bought one on a Black Friday deal, OLED DP7 maybe. And did it have the joystick yet?
No, it had two scroll wheels in the corners.
Ah, okay. Okay. Two scroll wheels on the corners. And then you had to have someone make the UI of the pop out, like the LUTs and the scopes and stuff like that.
Yeah, so all that we did, like we designed the UI, we designed every piece of functionality. Like we wanted to be able to handle LUTs and import LUTs, and all that had to be developed from scratch. We like the front of the DP7 had IR sensors behind, so it had these like 4 buttons on the left and 4 buttons on the right, and these two scroll wheels. And if it was set up to, if you move your hand kind of near the buttons, the like labels of what those
Wow.
buttons would do would pop up. Like it was really advanced. We
Wow.
even built this thing into it called the export, which was like this sort of like PCI slot style connector on the back that passed like high speed video signals through SDI, HDMI, audio control, power, both in and out. It was really complex and really expensive. And this is kind of part of what I was talking about earlier, where we just threw everything we could into it because we could, and we never asked ourselves if we should. And this is like the biggest learning lesson I think in my career. It's a very similar to like, I'm not comparing myself to Steve Jobs here, to be clear, but like they did the Apple II, I think, and then they really took off. And then he built the Lisa, which is like a famously overcomplicated, overbloated, very expensive computer that ended up flopping because it was so expensive and did a bunch of stuff no one cared about. That's essentially what the TP7 was for us, but just much smaller scale. And so yeah, it was a really, I'm still very fond of that product. It was built really well, and had all like the things like focus assist and waveform and all this stuff that we had to kind of figure out. And I remember we couldn't get the waveform to work in the FPGA for some reason, and we asked Blue Water if we could do it in software, and so we did it in software on the ARM, but it could only do it at like a few frames per second, but it could do it a little bit more granularly. And then eventually we did fit it in the FPGA, because FPGAs are different from like processors. Like there's a certain amount of blocks you have, and once they're used up, like you run out of space on an FPGA. If you're trying to do too much, so you have to size it appropriately and all this stuff, and they're expensive. But yeah, the DP7 was supposed to take a year, ended up taking 2. I remember it was like, I want to say it was like September of 2013, maybe, when we're sitting there going, holy crap, like we're gonna run out of money. Like we are running on fumes. This is the DP7 is still a ways out, and that's like our lifeline for how we're gonna recoup this investment and keep paying our bills. I said, you know what? Like we already had the panel secured, because like I mentioned before, we had to buy all these panels up front for the 7-inch OLED and stuff. So we had these LCD panels and these OLED panels just sitting in the warehouse. And I said, what if we just take parts of the DP6, parts from the DP7, and kind of push it all together and make some extra daughter boards and make it all work, and like put a housing around it and call it the AC7 OLED and the AC7 LCD. And I think from deciding that that's what I was going to do to shipping the product was like 3 months or something. It was the fastest product development I've ever seen, but it literally saved us. Like that product actually sold pretty well.
The market loved it.
Yeah.
And that must have been a lesson to you, just like the simple stuff is what funds and puts the blood in the company.
100%.
So the DP7 was over-engineered, I think is what you're kind of getting at. What did the market think? did they believe the same thing, or were they, taking everyone that was available?
Yeah, that was the DP7 was, I think it was a bit mixed. Again, we were still struggling with the color science. The color science stuff of these monitors is so difficult. The people at the higher ends of the industry are really like DITs and stuff, and DPs are really particular about color. We were really pushing the limits of not not only our own capabilities, but the capabilities of the technology we were using. And so it struggled in the color area a little bit, but it was really popular for like ACs and focus pullers and things like that because it was good for that. The focus assist ended up being pretty good in the end, and the UI was quite good, and we ended up coming with a high-bright version of it later, so that was good for like steady cams and whatnot. But that was, we didn't sell a ton of them, but we sold enough to get us to the next thing, which was taking everything that we had learned and basically redoing it into making what I call the Genesis platform, which was basically the first like SoC version of and that is still being used today. Like the Genesis platform that we shipped in like 2014 or maybe early 2015. And the first product was the 702, I believe, was the first one we used Genesis in.
You guys had the 502 that came out, 702 light, 702 bright. The 502, it had that loop that you had from the DP4.
The side finder, yeah.
Yeah, you get the side finder. You guys brought it back, and that's really exciting. But before all that, in 2014, Vitec starts contacting you guys, or were you guys looking to take some money off the table?
We were not looking. Honestly, didn't even cross our minds at that point. We were just, honestly, when we started the business, we had no idea what we were doing. We were just like, we're just building a business and making a living. Like it wasn't, what you'd expect, or what I would do today. It was just like, there was no end goal to it. It was just, let's just do this. And then, yeah, early 2014, really early on in 2014, I can't remember how it happened, but someone reached out to us, started the conversation. And then that started this like 10, 11 month long process of going back and forth and negotiating. And the way they do it, and I think this is true of most acquisitions, is they come in, they kind of hook you with a number, and then they slowly whittle that number down over months and months and months. And by the time you get to the end, you're so just like kind of over it that you're just like, you know what, it's still better than nothing. I'm just gonna take the deal because, in hindsight, I would have done a million things differently. But the fact is we weren't profitable. And as you may or may not know, when acquisitions are purely a multiple of profit in most cases, or free cash flow or something, not like revenue doesn't really matter to them that much. And so they just want to know how they can generate cash. And we weren't a cash generating machine. And so I kind of get it, except what we undersold in part through the deal, which is very clear to me now, and it was very clear to me a couple of years after, was we had put an enormous amount of investment and time and money and expertise in building this platform Genesis that was revolutionary and really like defined a market and was a building block for everything they would do for the next, I guess almost 10 years. And that wasn't really factored in at all, right? It's not just the fact that we built this architecture and pulled it off, but all the knowledge and learnings that we had to basically suffer to get to, that created that recipe, right? Like the page OS and all that stuff that we did, the unique user inputs and the user interface design, and the cost model was quite good. It was very efficient. All those things. It was scalable. We didn't sell that hard enough, and that's my biggest regret.
Another thing they kind of overlooked, which is a major asset of Smallhd and those years, the coming years, like 2016 2015 is when it was really popping off, was your guys' brand. Like the Smallhd brand recognition of filmmakers at that point was, you guys had a really good anchor, a really good flag in the sand, for like top-notch monitors. I think that's something that they put under the rug while they were doing the negotiations. So
100%.
I'm assuming there must have been, in the moment, with you and Wes, maybe it was just like you're tired, like you're trying to get out. But like in the coming years after, while you're still there, was there like an animosity towards the deal?
No, I mean, I made the decision, right? So I'm not going to play the victim or anything. I think, we made the decision. I think the state of mind we were in was simply we were in debt. We were in like probably about $1 million in debt at that business debt at that point, right? That we were using to fund cash flow inventory and things like that. And we weren't profitable. And so it was just like, you know what, man, like our names, our houses, Reed's house was all on the note, right? For this money, from the banks. And, we don't know how often an opportunity like this is going to come along. How many people are out there buying companies like Smallhd? Just not that many, right? We didn't even think it was really a reality until it happened. Like, there's not a lot of brands out there that would want a brand like Smallhd. That was our view of it at the time. It was like someone's holding us, opening a door for us where we can make a good bit of money. At that point, it's life-changing money. I'm in my 20s, and it's still a good chunk of money. Now, they got a hell of a deal, but it's still like I think everyone won at the time. But again, I think it was just like, if we don't get out now, will we ever get out? And and it was just more fear of the unknown and knowing what we had ahead of us. And I think that the big thing that I'm grateful for is that Vitec did, fund the business to because we still had a good amount of expenses ahead of us even after we were acquired and finishing up the platform, the Genesis platform. And had we not, would we have made it through and got to the other side? I don't know, probably, but it would have been difficult.
Like that whole moment of the deal and closing on the cash. I want to mention that like they set up a earnout package for you guys to hit certain performance points to earn another multiple of cash, which was it was a crazy amount. It was 5 times what the cash deal was. So it was like a big goal to work towards. And I've heard that it just wasn't possible for you guys to reach those.
Yeah, I don't want to like go on record with a super specific. No, I'm happy. I'm going to talk about it, but I'm just saying like the numbers I'm about to say may be a little off because I just don't remember exactly. But the way it happened was it was 4.7 million up front. And then there was an earnout that triggered based on various financial milestones for, I can't, this is the part I can't remember, a couple, 2-3 years afterwards. Maybe you're 1 to 2. It was some amount of time afterwards. Because if you can get to this profitability number by this date, you get this. If you get this profitability number by this date, you get this. And that, I think the total value was around 25 or maybe 30 million. And so like, oh yeah, if you look at the press releases, you're like, Smallhd sells for Vitec for, $30 million or
30 million. Yeah.
And the frustrating thing about that is because we were looking at this going, okay, we've got this new technology in the wings. We have a ton of applications ready for it. We think it's going to be really successful. And ultimately it was. The problem was the timing of the earnout schedule was just offset by a certain amount. That meant we ultimately did hit the goals. We just hit them later than we needed to. And so we missed every single one. And that was the hardest part. And then it was a couple of years after we exited. I can't remember, but Wooden Camera was acquired. And they were acquired for, I think, $20-ish million like in cash, right? And they were doing about 5 million in revenue at the time. So we're sitting there going, we're over 2 times as big as they are in terms of revenue and our technology and all this kind of stuff that we all had to offer the brand. And we made, 20% of what they did or 25% or whatever it was. Right. And I was salty about that for a while, because, they sold the $5 million revenue business. They sold for 20 or 25 million, whatever it was. In our, $10 to $12 million business, I can't remember exactly what the number was. We sold for 4.7. And that was tough. And, again, a little salty, but, the big difference was, that's why I alluded to earlier, is that Wooden Camera was highly profitable. So they were doing 5 million top line, but they were pulling down like $1 million or $2 million a year in profit, in pure profit. I mean, it was such a high margin business. And that's, so that kind of tells you how these acquirers think. I mean, it's just, can you generate cash? That's all that matters.
There needs to be like a recovery group of Vitec business acquires, and you guys all need to get into a room and just like talk it over. Hey, like, how did that go for you guys? Oh, it was great for us. Oh, were they really?
Yeah, if you just fast forward today and you look at like the value of the brands in the Vitec group, right? Like, or Videndum or whatever they're called now. Small HD is an anchor brand of, in my opinion, of that group, and they got it for 5 million. They spent however many tens of millions on Teradek, however many tens of millions on one camera, however many tens of millions on, that software company. I can't remember what the hell it's called, but that ended up going nowhere at all.
Yeah.
And so again, they got a good deal on Small HD, in my view of it. So just you live and you learn. It's all you can do.
I think the reason Smallhd is like their most identifiable brand now, and the reason competitors can't reach it is because of the technology advancement that it has, like camera cages and transmitters. Well, transmitters, they're kind of protected by certain patents and certain technology that Teradek's really have a lockdown on. And then Smallhd, you guys have that Genesis platform that you're speaking of, which I haven't heard until talking to you. I've never heard anyone refer to the UI of the new age Smallhd as the Genesis platform, which I'm really excited to talk to next.
That's internal, code name.
Internally, yeah.
That's just our intro. We have like code names for the various like platforms, and then like the sort of projects underneath them.
That kind of stuff excites me. Like, I only have like 2 or 3 people that work in and out of my company, but having like a Bible of the internal names, almost like exclusive to everyone not involved, is kind of exciting and kind of fun.
It's a good idea to use code names, because once you start calling something, like if we would have called it the 702 platform or something, like then people get in the habit of calling it something that it may not end up being called in the market, and so you get this weird like effect of people basically calling a product something completely different, and people knowing it as something that it didn't end up being. But Genesis was like the core platform. It wasn't like a specific board, and each of the boards for the products got its own name as well. It was all car stuff. So like the 4K platform now, which is based on Genesis, is called Cobra. The production monitor platform is called Camaro. The 2403, 1703 version production monitor is based on Genesis, was called Fusion, and on and on. So cool. Yeah.
Did the type of car like kind of reflect the project? Like if it was a Fusion, like a Ford Fusion, was it more of like a monitor for everybody?
Yeah.
Not so much like a Mustang or a...
Exactly. A little bit, right? Cool. And that's why like Cobra and Camaro, we're talking about the 4K stuff, so we were like a little sporty or whatever, in the Fusion and Genesis. And Genesis was really because it was like the new beginning of the company and the technology. And then Fusion, it was just more like, I'm not sure why we came up with that, honestly, but did more or less. Yeah.
Okay. So you guys like signed the papers, shook the hands. Now you're employees of Vitec. Woo! London-based company. Now you're working for them. Did it feel like for you and Wes, for you more specifically, did it feel like you guys had some weight off of the shoulders, and that some of that debt was kind of just taken from you?
Oh yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm still grateful for it. Everyone at Vitec was fine, and no one was. I mean, some people were hard to deal with, right? But that's just normal. And so the way they handled certain things, strategically and otherwise, financially, was a little annoying. But yeah, no one like did us wrong, I would say, like egregiously or anything. Got the money. I was able to, living life without financial pressure was new to me at the time. And we didn't have the debt hanging on our backs. We had, some money, and, could sort of relax a little bit. And that was nice. It was a very freeing feeling. It was good. And, I think the big thing with Vitec is, because I ended up staying there for about 5 years. I left officially at the end of 2019, and the biggest challenge I dealt with being there was just this behavioral change of the vision just got really, really short. It was like quarter results were all that mattered. Everything serves the quarter. We got to hit the number. We got to hit the quarterly number. So no matter what we had to do to hit that number, we would do, whether it was at the detriment of a longer term strategy that made sense or not. It's like, oh, we'll just respin this monitor. We'll respin that monitor. We'll add this little thing or whatever. How about we like zoom out and say, what can we do with this technology? It's actually innovative. And I kept pushing for things that kept getting I struggled. And I sort of lost my motivation a few years in because it just felt like we were just retreading stuff over and over again. And not to say it was all bad. And, when I left, they were finally getting into like, for example, we really wanted to do ProRes recording, right? Like Atomos does and like sound devices did, or video devices, I guess. And I actually led this charge, and I talked to the Convergent Design guys. I talked to the video devices guys, and we ended up buying the ProRes IP from Sound Devices. So we could basically fast track our ProRes implementation, and that we literally spent that money and it just got shelved. And to this day, I think they may do something with it at some point. I have no idea, but the ProRes offboard recording thing and monitors was like this. I always felt a little bit, I don't know, unfulfilled or something. I felt like that was a feature we wanted, but we just could never get to it because there was always something else. And I feel like the need for it died down a little bit because there was this period of time when camera sensor capability was outpacing encoding format and storage capability. And so these offboard monitors became really important. So you could slap an SSD on it, and DSLRs really struggled to record high quality footage, and they couldn't do ProRes and all that. But since then, I feel like that's gotten a lot better. And so it's not as strong of a need, but there's also some really cool stuff that you can do with if you're recording on a monitor, playback control and quick, even not like edits, but like tagging and labeling and just certain things, like sending it to different places, putting it in the cloud, whatever. And that felt like a missed opportunity. The 4K stuff was kind of the last thing I worked on. As I was headed out, I actually did all the CAD for the overall external architecture of the 4K monitors that they sell now. It has the little spine on the back, and then there's the IO panel below that. I came up with that spine system where you could slide on battery plates and things like that.
Mm-hmm. The dovetails that you could put accessories onto, the Teradeks that kind of fit on.
So I basically handed them that, and then I left. But they took it beyond where I left it, but the core concept was the last thing I did.
My favorite product in all of filmmaking is the 502, just because, it came out in a time when I think the Mac Studio was just coming out. And then also alongside that, Blackmagic was making this weird looking camera that also looked like an Apple device. And then Smallhd, you guys had the 502 come out, and I'm like, oh man, this is a beautiful piece of art. And it's solid.
Yeah, and it had a 1080p display on it, and it was 5 inches. It was super sharp and super thin and light, and yeah, I was really proud of that product and being able to fit what we fit on there and the problems we were able to solve. We even I'm not sure if you remember this, but we had a little cold shoe mount that would fold out, and it had a friction thing, so you could stick it on the top of a DSLR without any hardware or screws or nuts or anything. So there were some cool things, and I think that's the spirit, right, that I think Smallhd had through those years was just we were thinking about things through a sort of a broader lens. It wasn't just oh, we're going to make a monitor with these specs. It was how is it going to fit into the workflow, and how can we actually do novel things to improve things and that was, I think, the biggest thing Smallhd as a whole for the industry was before we entered the scene, everything looked like a Marshall. It was a big square box with knobs on the front. And we were like, hey, how about let's take a little pride in how these things look, and even the DP1 was just a very symmetrical, thin bezeled thing with, the ports not sticking out the back. And we kind of try to continue that through the entire time.
We'll get through all these. There's production monitors you started making, the 1303. It's more of an AC follow focus station. Even today, I think most ACs rock a 1303, and then the 1703, which was the 17-inch, kind of more of a video village monitor. And it had that architecture that you're talking about that you did the CAD software on. The 2403, which I don't think they make anymore. Is that correct? And the 3203, I've seen the 3203 in person, but
3203 was a huge flop. It was a terrible panel, and it was extremely heavy. I remember we built the 17, 24, and 32-inch ones, and we went to LA, and I was like, we were basically going on this like road show and going around to rental houses and stuff, and I had to carry that damn 32-inch monitor around LA. And I mean, that thing probably weighed like 40 pounds or something. It was so heavy, and it had this handle. I mean, you would just, it was, it was crazy. And the big thing though is, see, the thing about Smallhd is like a lot of the direction was defined by what panels we could get, because we couldn't just do anything. And we kind of forced the one with the 32. Like it was bright, and that was a thing. It was like 1,000 nits or whatever it was, and that's a lot for a 32-inch panel. And it was the brightest of its kind, but it came at too much of an image quality hit, which is why. And the overall, I designed the architecture mechanically for those monitors to scale up and down to whatever size panel. And so we could basically use a lot of the same subcomponents, same internal main board, same button boards and membranes and all this stuff that we would just scale the chassis up and down. And it kind of falls apart when you go above 24 inches. When you get to 32, it's just way too heavy. And so it just didn't go well.
this podcast is only possible because of listeners like you. If you enjoy the show, please share it with your friends in the biz. Equipment and services used to produce IMT4C are funded by the sales of products from Comfort on Set. My main product that we've been working on very hard is an app called Call Time. If you'd like to start tracking your career on set, or you'd like to automate your turnarounds, download and start using Call Time today. Call Time is a registered trademark of Comfort on Set. The one time I saw it, I was doing a PGA commercial, I think, with something Johnson, one of the best golfers, and our VTR guy had it strapped to the back of a golf cart. And I remember seeing it and seeing the logo Smallhd. I was like, oh, I didn't know they made him that big. I thought it was fake. I thought he took a TV screen and put your guys' logo on it. And he's like, no, dude, I'm like the only one in Chicago that has it.
Probably,
Like,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah, we sold dozens of them.
That architecture rocks, man. It's still out there. You got that handle that slides up, and they're still loving it. Everyone's still loving it, still rocking with it. 2018, you made the Focus, the 703, the 503.
All bangers.
Stopped using.
All bangers.
Yeah.
All classics. All instant classics.
Yep, those three. Yeah.
I think the 703 and the 503 is this. Tell me if I'm wrong. Did you guys stop using aluminum on the chassis?
No.
Or
no, the Focus was the only one we didn't. And the Focus was an interesting one. I think the whole thing started when I used to go to these panel trade shows. This one called SID. It's basically just a bunch of panel manufacturers and a bunch of other like ancillary companies. And I came across this panel. I'm just out there looking for panels. Because again, panels is just a crazy market. And it's like going to a fish market and you're trying to find some weird species, And so I found this panel, this little 5-inch panel that was 720p. It had a touch screen integrated into it. And it was like $30 or something. And I was like, it was apparently made for like when GoPro tried to make drones, their controller had a display integrated into it. It was that display. They built way too many of these panels because the drone thing was a flop. And so they had all this excess inventory. And so I went in and I found this panel. I was like, we could get it for cheap. We'll buy a bunch of them. And then I was like, let's build the cheapest monitor we can. That's, got the touch controls and integrates really nicely into, mirrorless and DSLR cameras. Had some questionable design choices on it that some people hated, like the way the HDMI port worked and stuff. It was mini HDMI or micro HDMI or whatever. And it was like keyed, so you couldn't use any HDMI cable, and people hated that. But by and large, It was $4.99, and for a smaller sheet product, that was a really affordable price. And we sold a lot. I think we sold over 20,000 of those, maybe more. Honestly, don't know. I know we sold at least that many, and so that was a really successful product, and really proud of that one. So one of the big things I was trying to champion there, which was really hard, was I like a small sheet kept going up and up market, right? It was just like everything just got more and more expensive, and to this day, right, it's everything there is really expensive. It's all very high quality stuff. I mean, again, the engineers, I know all these engineers, and I hired all these engineers that are still there today. Like they're all like really good. The electrical engineering guy, FPGA and software guys are just top notch, like best engineers I've ever worked with in my life, just so good. And so everything that's designed at Smallhd since 10 years ago is just all designed really, really well. But it's to do things right, and that to that high quality can be, or that high standard can be expensive. And I was like, there's this whole, we call it the indie market. There's like cinema, which is the higher end, and then there's indie, which is what you call people that are like shooting commercials, getting gigs, and using smaller cameras. And, yeah, prosumer is another word for it. And we just kind of priced out of that market. And I kept trying to push for these like alternate technological platforms that we could use, these different architectures that could allow us to get the cost down while keeping the quality and the performance standard up. But I think the challenge became is like the competition from the bottom of the market, right? The Chinese companies like Portkeys and I mean even Atomos and even Blackmagic,
Lilliput.
Yeah, like it got really hard to compete with those guys. Like that, at one point you could buy like a 5-inch, 7-inch monitor for like $200 that had SDI, and it was just like, how the hell are they doing this?
Most of them recorded too to a SSD. Yeah.
So that was tough, but I still think there's something there, but I also think like where's the market going to be in 5 years? You got AI out there, you got smartphones and stuff getting really, really good at this, and they already have HD OLED monitors on them, and I don't know, I remember best like
color.
Yeah. So you can do ProRes and
yeah, you can do all. You can Hey, that's you're gonna make an app that's basically a monitor. Pocket HD.
We actually spent a good amount of time trying to figure out how to turn the phone into the monitor. That was our biggest fear, like early on, like in like the mid 2010s or earlier even. Like we were sitting there going, man, these phones are getting like better and better. Like what's to stop someone from using this as a monitor? Like that was our biggest fear. And it's funny, even to this day, it still hasn't really come to fruition.
I mean, it's the best color in the palm of your hands. It's the Apple display, which is kind of the best in the world. So it'll happen. It'll definitely happen. It seems like like that idea that you had trying to compete for the indie market. Didn't Smallhd make an Indie 7 or like an Indie 5?
Yeah.
That was after you left though, right?
Yeah, it was after I left and didn't do very well from what I understand.
Had like a built-in yoke.
Yeah.
And a cold shoe. But yeah, it seems like they tried to take something that was in your heart, and they tried it after you left and didn't work out.
Yeah, in my opinion, it just can't be done using the hardware architecture they're using today. I think you got to go to pure SoC, like, or no non-FPGA ARM-based processing. And when I was looking at it back in the day, like years ago, it seemed possible. And 5-6 years later, it's got to be possible. I mean, your iPhone has more than enough power to do all the processing these things need to do. Obviously, you can't get those processors, but sort of 1 or 2 tiers down, I imagine by now you can do at least 1080p recording and scopes and all the stuff you need to do. But it just takes. And I just don't know if the market. It's been a while since I've looked at the market, so I don't know what's out there really.
What was like your last month at Smallhd? I think 2019 was when you officially stopped working there. And what was like the whole goodbye? You said you hired the best engineers. I mean, obviously that just comes with being employed by Vitec. They want a great engineering team, but was that also to start to phase yourself out?
Yeah, I mean, the way I build businesses, and to my own detriment sometimes, is I'm a big believer in just the primary goal that I have when building businesses in general is just to acquire the best people possible. Because if you can, it all starts and ends with that. If you can attract and retain really talented, passionate people, everything gets easier. Everything starts to compound in a positive way. And, and I just got really lucky with Smallhd in a lot of ways. Like, Russell, the head architect over there, who's just like just one of the smartest people I've ever met, is just kind of fell in my lap. And then, the head software guy over there, I hired him as an intern at NC State. He's a math major and just wasn't really in the software, scope at the time, but we just kind of was there really early and just started getting more and more skilled at stuff. And now leads all of software for Smallhd and a lot of other stuff as well. And the electrical guy, I hired a new engineering manager who ended up not working out, but then he brought in this guy. He used to work at like BlackBerry and stuff. And just, again, amazing. And they have a whole bunch of other guys too. It's just, I think, getting people installed, and it was hard to leave because it's like your baby and all that. I felt really attached to it, but I think the emotion started to sort of dilute a little bit over kind of the last 2 or 3 years I was there, because I don't know, like at some point it's like, I imagine it's like almost like empty nesting, like you raise your kids and they're everything, and then they just leave one day and you're like, man, what do I do with myself? It was kind of like that. Like at some point, like in like 2017, 2018, I started looking around going, you know what, like I'm not really all that important here anymore. Like the thing just goes and I'm just kind of around and I can kind of help influence things. And, but it didn't revolve around me by any means at that point. And, I felt like, you know what, I'm happier when I'm hands-on. I was spending most of my time at that point in the company, sitting in meetings, sitting in calls, building presentations and spreadsheets to try to justify things, product specs and things. And it was just not what I wanted to do with my time. I was comfy and I was making a good living and it was safe and easy and all that. I was like, I need to get back to the basement. I think that's where I do my best work. And jumped off to OhSnap in 2019. And, and it was looking back on it. Like sometimes I look back on my life and go, what was I thinking? And it just somehow keeps working out. I'm just really grateful for that. And I think a lot of it comes down to the people that I surround myself with. I'm really, really grateful for that.
Oh, right on. In your last few moments at Smallhd, were you starting to think about OhSnap? How did like the whole idea of making, a different pop socket come into your mind?
Yeah, so there was a couple things, the very untold story is that starting in like 2015 or something, me and Dave, who was one of the mechanical engineers at Smallhd, who works here now, old friend I've known for 20 years. I actually brought him up from Florida. He had no engineering training, and then I basically sat down with him and taught him SolidWorks, and then he just kind of took that and ran with it. Wow. And is now a phenomenal engineer. Awesome. And we were working on a grill design together. I thought my next business was going to be a grill business where we were basically building these. We built 4 or 5 iterations of this thing. I spent a ton of money on it. And it was this very novel thing. It's like, they have these things in commercial kitchens called salamander ovens, and they're like basically top down infrared burners that get really hot. So it's like the hotter you can cook food, the faster you can cook food, the better like char you're going to get or crisp you're going to get. And, the juicier it will be because it's less time for, moisture to leak out or whatever. And so, 2-3 years of building grills, and I realized that I almost started that, but I was this close to launching that business. And then I was just like, this is another really capital intensive, high liability business where the product's expensive, inventory is going to be crazy, like in the regulations and liabilities are involved in shipping burners that get to 2,000 degrees. I just feel like I'm barking up the wrong tree here. I just don't want to take this on. And then I was at a CES one year, I think 2017 or something, and I wasn't. I think I was maybe aware of pop sockets, but I didn't really know what they were. And I was given one as like a swag gift from some random booth or something. And I was like, it's an interesting concept. I like this. I hate it on my phone, but I think it's a cool concept. And then I ran into another grip business called Love Handle that was doing similar thing with like an elastic band thing. It's super simple product, like 3 parts in the whole thing. And I was talking to the guy at the booth. I was like, how many of these have you sold? And he was like, about 1 million. And I was like, are you kidding me? So I'm doing some quick math in my head, and I'm like, whew, man, even if $10, $15 and you're costing this is like $1 or less. And I was like, this is a better profile business. Now, to me, my thought,
You're like, oh, TAM.
yeah, exactly. Much larger TAM. That's exactly what I was about to say. Like Smallhd is a tiny TAM business, right? It's all the same energy and effort requires into building that business. At the end of the day, you're in this tiny market that even if you're the best in the world, you're only going to get so big, and there's only so many people willing to buy you and all that kind of stuff. Where I said, if I think I'm pretty good at product, and I want to try in a bigger pond. I want to swim in a larger TAM ocean, where there's a lot more competition. But if you can be in the top X percent, then you can actually win a lot bigger. And so that's where the consumer market excited me, because I thought it'd be fun to try to build a brand that can be like, nationally recognized by everyday people, and you can see every like normal people using the product in the wild and all that kind of stuff. And so yeah, I remember leaving that CES, getting home, and it's like just laying in bed, just thinking about it and about how I could do this, because I was like, you just need to do something like this that's just a lot thinner. Like it's just so thick. Like literally the night I got back, I think I came up with this concept of the slap bracelet sort of thing. And then that set off about a year or two of figuring out how to actually design that into a product that wasn't, because literally the first thing I did was I bought these tiny little mini slap bracelets. I cut them into the shape I wanted, which is cutting them down to size and taping them to the back of my phone. That was like the first prototype. Then it took like a year or two to refine that concept into the very first version, which we launched on Kickstarter in 2019.
I've cut those slap bracelets open from time to time, and sometimes you'll open it and it's the roll. It's literally has inches on it because they took it from, like, they bought it from the same company that makes tape measures. So you developed this product. That's what you were going to run with. The kind of geez, I don't know how to explain it in words, but yeah, it's like it's flat on your phone. When you snap it, you've got a slap bracelet on the back of your phone, basically.
A little loop forms, and then there's this little hook and a hole on each end that can latch, essentially close. And so you have a closed loop that you can stick your finger in. It's all covered in silicone, so it's nice and soft. It's actually really comfortable. There's people I know that still like swear by that version, and I have like thousands of them left over. That's why I was like giving them to people who like really care about that version. And but yeah, that design, it kind of kicked off a crazy series of events where we did the Kickstarter, raised in total, like the public number, I can't remember what it was, but in total we raised about 750 grand. Built the units, shipped them out in January, and then pretty much by February realized that we were screwed, because they were breaking in the field at a high clip. Like it was just one of those things where it was in the chemistry of the metal or something that we couldn't freaking spend a whole month of February trying to figure out how to like test for this. Built all these cycle testers, just tried everything we could. And at this point, like we couldn't go to China anymore because the COVID thing was kicking off. And so it was really tough to work through because we literally couldn't go to the factory. And that was the craziest part about the OhSnap thing, is like normally you go to the factory to when you boot up a production. And like we did our first product, we did that. And then literally 3 months after launching it, it shut down. It shut down for like over 2 years. Like we couldn't go back until, I can't remember exactly, 22 or 23. It was wild how long it was closed. And so we're basically having to build and launch products without having to ever set foot in the factory or dealing with new suppliers. But anyway, they were breaking at like a 40-50% clip. It was like weird. It would either break really quickly or it would last forever. And we could not find the correlation as to why. So I said, okay, all right, we got to really quickly, because again, we're running out of money. We got to completely redesign something. And at some point it clicked for me that one of the missing things here is if we could turn the grip into a magnetic interface that could also be used with wireless chargers. So that the wireless charger is in the right spot and you don't have to worry about the pad positioning and all that kind of stuff. I think that would be really cool. And that's when that idea happened. I think in like March. It was like COVID was just like ramping up, and I was sitting in my house basically just like 3D printing designs for this over and over and over again. And then we launched the Kickstarter for that design in May. So like basically February, realized we had the problem, realized we couldn't fix it. March, designed this thing. And then in May, did the Kickstarter for this, what we call the 1.0 version, which was the first circle version that had magnets in it. And that was essentially MagSafe. It was like basically what MagSafe was going to be later that year. We didn't know it was coming. And so then we launched that, did like 1.4 or 5 million total on that, which was a crazy successful campaign for a little $20 thing. Like we sold a lot of them on Kickstarter. And that really got us going. We had launched some other accessories, started building out the ecosystem, kind of getting in the groove. And then September comes along, iPhone 12 with MagSafe comes out. And we were like, oh my God, this is like a whole different standard than what we're trying to build. We were basically trying to build this like MagSafe, like OhSnap MagSafe standard called like MagSnap. And then so we were like, okay. And of course the standard was different from ours. So we were like, all right, we can't swim against Apple. Like there's no way we're going to win that fight. Right. So we had to redo the grip again, to conform to MagSafe. And so I'll stop there, but so that kind of gives you a little glimpse into how OhSnap started. Just crazy with jumping off, did the Kickstarter, jumped off of Smallhd, COVID hits, ruins everything. And then we basically have to scramble for a year, to figure all that out.
When you were making the Kickstarter campaign, how many people were with you? That's one part of it. And then the other thing is like, did this kind of bring you back to when you were making the Doritos ads back then, when you were like starting to make something for yourself? You were talking about getting back into the garage. Was this like bringing you back?
100%. It's equal parts like fun and terror. You don't realize sort of how, I don't know what the right word is for it, but by the end of Smallhd, I was just like an executive. I was just sitting in my office doing spreadsheets and kind of.
Well, it was a publicly traded company, and you were like working for the numbers.
Exactly, and you just kind of start to kind of lose certain skill sets if you don't use them for a while, And so again, I just kind of seem to be connected with people at the right times for whatever reason, but I guess I was like 2017, 2018, I was looking for basically someone to work underneath me, kind of like a apprenticeship sort of thing. And Reed, who was still working at Smallhd at the time when we were all still at Smallhd. I guess this probably would have been 2017. I was like, Reed, I'm looking for like this type of person, someone like me who's technical, who can do stuff, who I can just kind of have do random things for me. And kind of learn the ropes and stuff like that. And he's like, I got this kid here who's is interning for me, named JD, who's just like can do anything I've thrown at him. He's done a really good job. He was like, you can have him. And I was like, sweet. So take this kid, start just doing random stuff with him, kind of throwing him things as needed. He like built me my plasma machine that I bought, or like kind of did some graphic work, or worked on this DIY PC case I was building, whatever it was. And then so in we moved into the new office that this current office Smallhd is in. He was in my office with me, and he was like kind of half working on OhSnap stuff, and like he was kind of starting to build like some of the marketing material and videos and stuff, and starting to learn those skills, and because it was all new to him. And so this first Kickstarter video that we shot in the Smallhd studio and around Smallhd in 2019. He did a lot of that like editing and stuff, and that was like his first real foray into that. And then so it was basically me and him and Dave and Mark, essentially. And there was a fifth guy, Bogdan, who also kind of was like the sort of initial team. It was 5 of us, and it was ops. Mark was over ops, and Dave was engineering with me, and JD was over like basically marketing and content, and Bogdan was kind of working with JD on that side of the business. And JD is still like here and is a founding member, and has like just everything you see, all those commercials and ads you see, he does those. Like it's like he is just super smart, super hard worker, and can just learn anything. Super grateful he just kind of like fell in my lap again. Just like the Russell story, right? These people, I just kind of know it when I see people like this, and I latch on, and I try to make it a fun experience to work with me, and they stay around, and so JD has, and now we have a bunch of people here. We're in this new office now. We moved into about a year ago.
Looks great.
Yeah, we got about 20
Comfy.
people, and Tim. So Wes actually works here. now.
What? Okay.
Yeah, I hired him about a year ago. He kind of went off.
I should have offered for him to come on. I'm sorry. I didn't
Yeah, oh yeah,
I didn't even know you guys still kept in touch.
yeah. We just were I was shooting some video with him and Josh, the MCon guy, earlier today.
Wow.
But yeah, so he's here now. I got Dave here, who's also from Smallhd. Tim, who worked in a bunch of different jobs at Smallhd, is over here. Tim does all of the copywriting and writing in general for all the ads and all the stuff. So he's
Holy
again just
cow.
a super talented guy that just never got the opportunity to do what he was good at Smallhd, and was basically working
Yeah.
like in the service department. And I was like, bro, you've got these skills, like come do it over here at OhSnap. And he jumped over here pretty early on, and basically he's written all of our content and copywriting and stuff like that since then. So yeah, man, I got a really, really solid team here, and we're just really getting started, even though we're in year 5. It's crazy.
Yeah, dude. I want to speak to the ads you guys make. Like what was his name? The one who writes everything?
Tim.
Tim writes the most hooking ads that are I hold them up by Dr. Squatch, Old Spice. It's got the same smell as those ads, and you guys have a spokeswoman who just rocks it. And I read all the comments of I see the Facebook, the Meta ads, and people love and watch every single second of your guys' ads. And you amass millions of views on every single one you make. It's quite crazy. So when I first saw that you were involved in Smallhd and OhSnap, and I was getting the ads for OhSnap while working with Smallhd projects, I was like, I was like, oh my God, like Dale's in my life like nonstop these days.
It's pretty funny. We sort of always had the capability to make that style of ad, but like when we started OhSnap, when you start an e-com business, which is essentially what OhSnap is today, we're in retail now, but like for the first 4 years, it was all D2C. Like content is everything, right? Like it's even more important than in really ever. Like you live and die by the creative you can output and how the volume and quality of it. And so, but most of the stuff we would make is either me talking to the camera, just going through the features in a whiz bang way, or, just other like short little things. And we had always considered making ads like these sort of what we call the Amanda ads, these like kind of Dollar Shave Club-esque, like that sort of format that was popularized by the Dollar Shave Club ad, 10 plus years ago. And we always discussed it, and we were like, it just feels like that style's been played out. Like we never did one particularly, like we thought of it a million times. We're like, no, it just, those are over. Like those are that like whole like Harmon Brothers like thing, that kind of wave is crested. And but then I was talking to another founder of another company, and he was saying, yeah, like we do these ads and they crush for us. And I was like, really? Okay, so they're not dead. Good to know. And then I was like, Tim, JD, let's make something like this. And then they did this like casting call for the person. You had to get the person right. That was again something Tim is great at. It's just kind of like the nuance behind that sort of casting process. And it was crazy is that Amanda is actually local. She was in Raleigh. And so we had like submissions from all over the country, of course. And the one we liked the best was right here, which is crazy because Raleigh's not known for the acting community.
Yeah, man, everyone loves you guys' ads. You've got a hold on it, and what that new architecture that is like MagSafe, but also has a few moving parts to get the circle off the phone. Was that you or you and JD or who was
the design of it?
Yeah.
It was me and Dave. It was
Dave.
In 2022 or something. We were looking at this like charging thing. We really wanted to be at some point decided we need to make a grip that is thin enough to that it still works with wireless charging through the grip, through a case, kind of in any situation, which I could go and talk for days about the complexity of that and how stupid that is. But, I basically did a bunch of testing with Apple's MagSafe charger and, Apple phones. And I basically shimmed the charger away from the phone little by little and found out that it stops working at about 4.7 millimeters. looked at a bunch of cases and said cases on average are around 2 millimeters. They should be. A lot of stupid cases out there are like 4 millimeters thick. You're the worst. What's wrong with you? But any normal case is about 2 millimeters thick, so that leaves a margin of about 2.7 millimeters. So I added a little buffer in there, and I said we need to make a grip that's 2.5 millimeters thick. That's the goal. If we can do that, then we'll work. And then basically just got in the shop and just started ideating things and came up with the Snap 3, which is this like living hinge design, right? It's got these arms that like do this, and it's all one part that's molded, and it's the arms are quite cheap to make. There's a lot of other complexity around it, but the Snap 3, again, we were really rushed to make this product for, again, reasons that the second gen version of the product wasn't great. When we kind of reformed the circle design to the MagSafe design, that version of it was, again, kind of a miss. And so we were really in a hurry to get this other thing done. So we kind of rushed it, and that product, like while it did work and was thin and did all the things we wanted to do, it felt really cheap and crappy. And so we said, okay, we got to do another one of these. We got to take the concept that we came up here, which is solid, and then just like make it better. And I hired Eric, who's head of product now, and he has this really like this eye for quality, and like he founded a business where he built physical products, and he's just like a much more like detail oriented version of me. With a solid background product. And so he's like, hey, there's these materials that we can use and all this kind of stuff. We did all this math and science around like the arm geometry and the proportions, and wrote a bunch of Python code to like optimize like the stand angle and the one finger mode, two finger mode, different finger sizes and all that. Came up with this multi-spoke design to make it look a little more sophisticated, because a lot of this stuff is first impressions, like someone buys something and they look at it, and like whether it's durable or not, whatever it appears is what they're going to think it is. So we had to make like the cap out of like a super rigid, material. It's very expensive and hard to deal with. And there's a lot of challenges. But anyway, we came out with the Snap 4 Lux at the end of 23. And that's still our core product today. We are going to be working on some new stuff this year. We have a lot of new stuff this year. I think 25 is going to be really the coming out year for OhSnap. We have just a bunch of really cool stuff in the works, and some things kind of coming back to the cinema space a little bit. So,
oh boy, all right, you're gonna get reacquired by Vitec. No,
I don't know about that.
No. So yeah, from starting and growing and selling, Smallhd. Obviously, this company is way different. And it's a company that I assume you want to keep for the rest of your life, or it's just like it's your thing for now, maybe. But what's different from Smallhd to running this company, just down to its bones? What's different?
Yeah, I'd say this business is extremely different, primarily from how it's run. Like I said earlier, Smallhd is all like completely vertically integrated. Like we did everything except for like cutting and molding the parts, right? But everything was shipped. Like even for a while, like we were doing PCBAs, like we were buying individual components for the circuit boards, kitting them all and shipping them off to a company that would populate them and send it back. Like it's an enormous amount of complexity. Like we had to literally build something called an MPS system at Smallhd, which was like the assembly system that we used in this program called NetSuite, which is a ERP software that's really expensive, and I hate them, even though I use them and you still use them here. They're just very like predatory, in the way they do things. But anyway, we had to so people on the line, or everything they build, they scan, and that goes into the inventory system, makes the adjustments, and handles warranty and service, and this big service network. All that was built. It was really complicated is the point. And that's just on like the execution of the product side, not let alone what it takes to design one of these products. I mean, these circuit boards have thousands of components on them. The supply chain of the components alone is crazy. Some of these things have 50-week lead times. Oh, you want to use this resistor? Sorry, we're not. And COVID really accentuated that as well, from what I hear. I wasn't there at the time, but and dealing with processors and like pricing, and just like I've been to like the headquarters of Xilinx and stuff like that, trying to negotiate just to let them, hey guys, can we please even just use, I'll give you money, you give me a processor. I have to like convince them to sell this stuff to me. It's crazy, at a decent price. And so it's just a really complicated business. And and everything was done in house. Now the difference with OhSnap is like I took a very different approach this time. I only want to in-house value creation. And that primarily is product and marketing. Those are the two engines of the company. We got to make great product. We got to market it well. Those are the two things I want to own. Everything else just needs to be competent and done well. And we can outsource a lot of it. Like, so we have no HR. We have one finance. Like I actually outsourced finance entirely for the first 4 years. We just added a head of finance like 6 months ago. Operations, again, we had to have we just added a supply chain guy another like 6 months ago. And so pretty much anything that we can outsource, we do. And like all of our suppliers are outsourced. We don't do any assembly or anything like that here. We don't do like, really anything other than just the main overhead to manage everything. All of our partners, we have a bunch of different partners in a bunch of areas. And we do the product design and we do the marketing. And that's really all I want to do. Because it's, it's really hard to be excellent in every phase if you're doing it in-house. Where when you think about like assembly of product, it's just there's companies out there that's all they do all day, and I just don't have no illusion that we can do it as well as them or as cost effectively as them, and so I don't want to waste cycles or resources on those things. I want every spare piece of time or energy we have needs to be put into product and marketing, because those are the things that drive the car, and that's what we need to be excellent at more than anything else. We have like an amazing shop here with 3D printers, tons of 3D printers and CNC machines and water jet machines and lasers and
That's awesome.
all that kind of stuff. And we have a great studio in here with all the equipment we need, the lights and cameras and whatnot. And then like you can kind of tell back here, like the office is basically built like a sound stage intentionally, because all those videos you see us making, most of those are shot in house. We just literally set up a little scene in some corner of the office or against a wall or whatever. And so it's really versatile, and we do that intentionally because, again, those are the two areas that really, really matter.
Sounds like a dream office for anyone like me or you. You brought the basement out of Wes's house and you put it in there, and then you brought the joy of making commercials in there as well. I have one last question, but before that, I want to say, like, I noticed you found a young inventor through, I think, social media, who made a gaming controller that flips out from a phone case. And I just want to thank you for scouting talent and giving that guy a chance. And that seems to be a really cool project and collaboration.
Again, just another example of a little bit of luck. Like I don't know whether it's some sort of intervention or luck. I don't know what I believe on that front, but like I said, people just kind of found their way into my life one way or another. It's sort of the seemingly perfect times, and it's not nothing's easy, but this thing was a crazy story. How I was kind of struggling a little bit in the second half of last year. I was kind of searching for a vision. Not like a spiritual one, but like just a roadmap, product vision. Like, what is this brand trying to be, like, beyond grips, right? Like, what is obviously, grips is still a large TAM, but it's still, we need to be more than that, and we need to kind of transcend that. And I was struggling to find out what's that common thread that we can build from, that's just not like, hey, we're a grip company or we're a charger company. Like, I'm not going to go compete with freaking Belkin. Like, I'll lose that fight, Anchor, or whatever. And so this guy Josh, he sends me a message on LinkedIn, which I don't check a lot. Like, I see the notifications, and most of the time it's someone trying to sell me something, right? So I don't really pay a lot of attention, but I happen to be on my phone when he sent it, and I see the notification on my screen, and I read the first couple sentences, like, this actually doesn't seem like someone trying to sell me software or something. So I click it, and there's a YouTube link in there that he had sent, and I was like, okay, I'll click it, and I clicked it, and takes me to this video that he made that at the time had 300,000 or 400,000 views. And I was like, interesting. And then it's like basically his story. And I was like, that's such a good idea. How did I not think of that? What is wrong with me? All these like self-deprecating thoughts start flooding. But then I was like, okay, you find yourself in this weird situation where, I think a lot of people would have just said, ignored it, taken the idea and run with it. You know what I mean? Like we don't necessarily need Josh to build this product, it's absolutely great to have him. And he adds a lot, especially in sort of the lore and the narrative and all that kind of stuff. But from a physical like implementation aspect, that like he needs us more than we need him on that in a sense. But I said, I'm gonna talk to the kid, and we started getting into the weeds with them, and they were basically asking me to be CEO of the company. They were looking for a CEO because Josh is like kind of the product guy, but he doesn't know how to build a business and all the intricacies that come with that. It's really complicated. And I was like, I'm already CEO of this company. I can't give you the time you need, on a consistent basis. And so, long story short, it was the deal sort of kind of changed around a bunch of different times. He had these two investors that were very problematic. And so we kind of worked together to solve that problem with them. And now basically, OhSnap and MCon have completely basically merged. We're creating a new company as a subsidiary of OhSnap. Together, we are building this MCon controller together and kind of executing his vision. And there's been a lot of really cool developments on that. And so OhSnap, and then what that did for me was so important, that it sort of crystallized in my mind like what OhSnap is about. And OhSnap is about taking the attributes of your phone that are important to you and boosting them, and sort of accentuating them in a positive way. And I need to come up with a better way to phrase that. But if you primarily use your phone to scroll TikTok, right? Like a grip is a handy thing to have. It just makes it more comfortable and more secure to hold. And with the side benefit of being thin and looking good and being able to charge, that's fine, right? But then if you care about your phone, in the gaming sense, if you actually mobile gaming is a massive industry. Like it dwarfs all other gaming and even movies. So if you care about that, right, OhSnap makes the thinnest, most pocketable version of a game controller that exists right now with MCon. And then there's some other areas of that I'm looking at as well, that we can add to. So it starts to kind of build some meaning into the DNA of OhSnap. We don't just make grips or chargers. We make like products that enhance your phone in the thinnest, least bulky way possible. And that's sort of completing the circuit for me. And so I'm really grateful it happened. Again, I'm just very fortunate. I think that if anyone who's been successful in business tries to tell you that luck doesn't play a part, they're lying. Absolutely, luck plays a part in all this stuff, man. I think I think there's some great people out there with great work ethic and ton of intelligence that failed because they were just frankly unlucky. They didn't get that break at the right time or whatever. Just look at Steve Jobs. Like, he just happened to live across the street from the HP guy in Silicon Valley in the 70s when all this stuff was getting off the ground. There are some things you're out of your control that you just have to be aware of and grab by the horns when those opportunities arise. And I think it's just like recognizing when opportunity strikes and then seizing it is one of the most important things. But sometimes the chips don't fall your way, or the cars don't fall your way, or whatever the expression is.
I love it. I think you knew what my last question was, which is a question I steal from Guy Raz. I'll ask it anyway, but I think you answered it. When you think about everything you've accomplished and all the things with building and selling Smallhd and building your new company and finding the right people and hiring such talent and staying healthy through all of that, how much of that do you consider, or I guess owe to your hard work, and how much of that do you owe to the luck?
Yeah, I'd say that's tough, but like 50-50 probably. I think luck plays an enormous role. Again, like Smallhd, if I didn't have the right people come into my life at the right time, how would it have ended up? I don't know. I'd like to think that I would have figured it out somehow, but I don't know that I would have. Like, I don't program FPGAs. I don't do software coding. I don't do electrical engineering, and I don't do marketing on the level that JD does marketing, and I don't do writing on the level that Tim does writing, and all these people just happen to be within arm's reach at the right times to put it all together. I'm just a guy who has some ideas, and I'm reasonably capable of certain things, but I'm very much a generalist. Like, I don't specialize in anything. Like, I can develop product and I can do product and all that, but I'm not the best at it. And I can do video and I can do graphics, but I'm by far from the best at that. And I'm not a great manager, and I don't think I'm a fantastic, like, inspirational leader or anything either. I don't know, whatever it is, I just been able to glue people together in the right way. And I'm not also trying to say that I've got it all figured out, that everything's hunky dory and I'm just like flying to the moon or anything either. It's still very difficult and we have our challenges. But like I said earlier, you just gotta wake up and come in and do the work, and just kind of know where you're going. I think that's the most important thing, is to have that vision, what is this future you're trying to build? I think that, having gone through a little bit of fundraising now, for the first time, it's become really evident to me how important that piece of it is. Like, if you can't go to someone and try to explain to them what you do, and them go, huh? Like, if it's gotta mean something to someone when you sort of describe what you're trying to do, and so I think going through the process of just trying to like build a pitch deck or something like that is something I absolutely hate. I'm doing it right now and I freaking hate it. But it forces you to sort of crystallize what the hell it is you are even doing and why it matters and why it's actually might be successful. And so it's a valuable exercise to go through. And so there's just so many things to learn. And I think these days it's getting so easy with AI and stuff. Like, you could Google stuff before, but now you can get an immediate, thorough answer on literally anything you want in like 5 seconds. And so I think a lot of it too is learning how to leverage technology and staying up to date on what's out there to make your life easier and sort of simplify complex things as well. And so I think that's worked for me as well in my life. Is just, I've always been technologically minded. I'm always, kind of at the tip of the spear in terms of what's out there and in terms of how you can attack complex problems in the simplest way possible. And that, combined with good people, and a reasonable vision, is really it. Plus luck certainly sprinkled on top. But yeah, long-winded answer to your simple question, but I think that's the best I can put it.
That's the best way put. Thank you, Dale.
Yeah, man.
You're an inspiration to me. And it warms my heart that you took out 2 hours and 8 minutes out of your day with residuals on that to set up and break down the kit. So thank you very much. I will handle your interview with as much care as I can.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. I was really flattered when I can't remember if you sent it to me or if someone else did, but that like little mini series or that thing on Instagram I saw where you like kind of went through the Smallhd story. I was like, man, this guy knows my story better than I do. It's like really impressive. So yeah, I'm happy.
Oh, hell yeah. All right. That's very kind of you to say. That was me. But yes. Yeah. I was like lucky to find the Hurlbut produced story, and when I watched that I was like, I did not know all of this happened and I need to talk to these guys. And wow. Yeah, speak of luck. Thanks for getting back to my LinkedIn, and I'm glad my case made it there all safe. At this moment, I think we can say goodbye. Thank you for listening or watching I Made This for Crew podcast episode 2, the story of Smallhd and OhSnap. The theme song is by Dean McDonald of Lucid Music. It's produced and hosted by me, Kane Katubik. This episode was edited by Joe Gagos. Equipment and services used to make IMT4C are funded by product sales of Comfort on Set. If you receive call sheets and would like to spend less time finding out when to sleep, wake, or leave for work, start using the Call Time app. Use call cards instead of call sheets for more glanceable information. Call Time is a registered trademark of Comfort on Set.